Hi everybody, you're listening to the Khandaan podcast by the You Podcast team, a bi-weekly podcast revisiting the movies of Amir Khan, Salman Khan and Shah Rukh Khan.
Every show we pick a random year from 3 decades of collectively 300 films the Khans have done and let our listeners vote which movie we should talk about. So it's entirely up to you.
Pick a team, make a vote, take us down nostalgia lane, punish us, or make us reassess a movie we dismissed.
We love the Khans, most of us, sometimes. And we would love for you all to be part of our Khandaan, because when it comes to the Khans in Bollywood, nothing else really matters.
What were you saying before I interrupted you guys? Sorry.
The Ghana podcast stuff.
Yes. I think we won it, man. If there's like justice in the world, as the song goes, this is ours, right?
But it was a kind of pleasant surprise to wake up on the 1st of January of the new year and see Amrita tagging us. I think Tanzila tweeted tagged you on the post on Ghana podcast saying we got nominated for the entertainment podcast of the year. So yeah, and we've got Anupama Chopra's 2 podcasts on there as well.
I just want to shout out to everybody who's been tuning in over the past couple of years to the Khandaan, because the only reason we got onto that list with Anupama being a proper podcaster and then just us being what we are, it's because of the people who tune in every week, and that's awesome. So thank you guys. Whether we win or not, we are very happy to have you guys on our side.
We are already winners in your hearts.
कितना filmy है रे?
I'm already writing my winner speech,
Are you just going to rip off Shah Rukh's from Om Shanti Om? Isn't that what you're going to do?
Pretty much.
That's the plan.
You can't get better than that, so why not?
Talking about podcasts, by the way, our friend Aparita from the Khabardar podcast is launching a new limited edition fiction show in Hindi, and it's called Darmiya, and I think there's 4 episodes, and it's launching I think on January 11th, and you can find it at darmiya.com. And you guys should really check it out. It's a fiction show, that's different. We don't have a lot of that in Hindi, do we?
Khandaan is slightly fiction. We usually make up 90% of what we're saying anyway, right?
It's all khayali pulao and biryani here, so why not?
But I do love the little trailer they have already on the Twitter account, and it looks really, really intriguing. I'm looking forward to subscribing, and I think people should. You can find it at Darmiya Podcast on Twitter. Beth.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. We haven't even welcomed you with all of this, bookkeeping nonsense we're doing. How are you?
I'm really happy to be starting my year with you all.
Yeah, this is becoming a tradition, no?
Yeah.
I think this kind of puts a pep in our step to, get the crew together and start the year on a positive note, because usually it goes rapidly downhill after this.
Well, and I don't, maybe you are the same. Tomorrow I go back to work, which is, just sitting in my dining room again with my computer. And having a sort of nice thing at the end of my break is really helpful.
I don't know what I'm doing because the government changes rules every few hours here. So apparently we don't have schools from tomorrow, which we thought we were. So let's get into it, because this is going to be a long show anyway, right? Unless Amrita, Sujoy, anything else that I was forgetting that I want to talk about?
Not really. Yeah. I think we can just dive into the show.
Yeah, but wait, we should probably decide how this long show is going to do, because we want to cut it into 2 parts, right? So what are the 2 parts?
Yeah, I thought you said the first part would be what we watched during the break since our last recording, and the second bit would be the best of 2020, whatever we wanted to pick.
Exactly. You hit it on the nail. So we're going to be now talking about all of the stuff we watched, and then next episode next week posted is going to be our kind of best of wrap up of 2020 kind of show.
It should be the other way around, because it makes more sense to come back with best of 2020, and then the next week would be...
I was just thinking, because COOLIE No.1 and like AK versus AK, the discussion will be very old then. Nobody gives a damn.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking this way. And others, although there's like 2 podcasts around this again. And by the way, I was on the other podcast discussing COOLIE No.1 on our friends Bollywood is for Lovers. So a lot of my thoughts on this episode will probably be a repeat on what I mentioned over there. So do go check it out there. I don't get interrupted by Amrita and Sujoy. And that's... and I don't get called out for all the blatant lies I'm saying. So it is what it is, you know. You can see whatever you want to listen to, you know. Okay. So yeah, let's get started. We didn't have much to talk about in the last few weeks, but I think during the Christmas break, we were really well served, right? So a lot of things came out. And I think we just want to kind of go over, chat what we watched. And I think we didn't all necessarily watch the same things. I'm not even sure if Amrita watched anything. So
I made her watch one, so I know she's got at least one.
Yeah. So let's get going. So how have you been keeping busy over the break, Beth?
Oh, I've watched so many things. So a lot of them were, trying to catch up with 2020 Hindi films. I caught a few TV series of the Indian series as well. I watched, as is my tendency, and I did make Amrita watch things with me. We watched historical British people having love life problems, and we watched historical British people killing each other and then solving mysteries.
Sorry, Beth, how do you get Amrita to watch things? Because I haven't figured it out.
I don't know. It's some sort of magical thing that we've just developed over having been friends for over a decade now.
Tera mujhse hai pehle
I can usually tempt her with, the other day it was Cary Grant, but I'll say, like, you want to watch a Shashi Kapoor movie with me, or do you want to watch Ashok Kumar with me? And that usually works.
She has
Amrita, how do you justify this? I feel so inadequate as a friend at the moment.
You never offer me Shashi or Ashok Kumar. What can I say?
True. Yeah, that won't be changing, honestly. I can't meet you in the middle unless it's going to be like Sohag with Amitabh and Shashi Kapoor. Great. So, Beth, so what have you been like? What were kind of the shows and the movies that you watched?
So I'll start with the shows, because I really have not watched Indian series at all. I don't think I'm not sure I can name any other than Sacred Games, but I watched Bhag Beanie Bhag with Swarab Haskar, and I really liked it, despite its obvious similarities to Mrs. Maisel, but kind of moves past that and becomes its own thing. And I just started last night Taj Mahal 1989, which I'm also really enjoying. Those are both on Netflix if anyone is looking for some sort of lighthearted series to watch. There's no cops, there's no murders. Like, it's something I keep hearing, about Mirzapur and things like that. And I'm like, I don't think I have the stomach for that right now. But these are kind of, they have substance, but they're not going to be a downer like some of those series.
And were you actively like looking for lighter things to watch?
I was. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And for me, sometimes it's also the subtitling issue. Like I'll commit to a movie with reading. But sometimes if it's a show, I can't make that commitment. I don't know why. Shows are not less than movies at all necessarily anymore. But yeah, so I'm looking for things that I think will not make me just want to stay flat on the sofa for the rest of the day.
I was actually surprised that you don't watch a lot of streaming Indian shows. Because I think you mentioned that in your email too. I was quite surprised.
I forget to look for them. I forget to, if someone is mentioning something on Twitter and I don't know what it is, I forget to go look for it. Also, we can get into this later, but Netflix I don't currently have Prime, but Netflix doesn't give those to me. So I don't, I don't notice.
I think once you start watching one show, it will start sort of rolling from there.
I think
since you watched this,
Yeah, after I finished Pug Beanie Bug, that I had never heard of Taj Mahal 1989 at all. It came out, in March or something? I'd never even heard of it, even though I like the people in it. And it should be and it is right up my alley, but I didn't even know it was there. So Netflix suggested that to me, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I really like it, so.
I think I watched one episode of Taj Mahal, and it didn't connect with me that much.
Yeah, me neither.
Does it get better? Like, did you finish it, or
I'm about halfway through, and I'll watch Neeraj Kabi in almost anything. But I also, Amrita can speak to this too. We went to Lucknow a couple of years ago, and I love it. And I love the, what's in the background. I love the scenes of them going to the movies or shopping or the school. I work in higher ed, so having the professor characters is funny to me. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I was telling a friend of your podcast, Uday, about asking him if he's watched it, and I was saying, for us touristy types, it's really nice to watch, and he's, I think it kind of scratches some itch for me that way as well, maybe, like just seeing all those buildings in the background and the food. Even I know enough to want to wish I were having Lucknow food. So it's I really like it.
And how about you've also been binging on Bridgerton, I imagine.
Yes, I blazed through Bridgerton really fast. That is squarely in my wheelhouse. I'm meant to watch that with me too, some of it. After we finished one episode, we were both like, more? One more episode? And of course, I'm telling everyone I know to watch that. That was a very satisfying end of year for me too. Like, that's the perfect thing to watch when it's -8 Celsius outside and you don't have anything better to do. So
I even watched a bit of Bridgerton. Aww. Because my amazing wife was watching it, and I just kind of glanced in the middle a little bit while I was kind of reading what was going on. There is a lot of banging in that show.
So there is a Glee meme, right, with Sue Sylvester on Twitter, and I saw a meme of I'm going to create XYZ. So the one for Bridgerton was, I'm going to create an episode which has so much sex in it.
I think that's episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8. The second half of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprisingly a lot. It's because there was also an online discussion about how sex has been removed from movies. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, about film critics and how it's never necessary to put sex scenes into a movie or a show. And it was just funny that then Bridgerton has so much sex in it. But yeah, it's all kind of
one of the things that
naked dry humping, there's not it's not Basic Instinct or anything like that.
So one of the things that Bridgerton did, and Beth actually sent me a link to a podcast that I'll share to put in the show notes for those who are interested. But they did something that's really good, and I believe the practice began with HBO on Game of Thrones because there's just so much nudity and sex in that show. But they got this woman to act as an intimacy counselor, and she worked with the actors to make sure that everybody was on the same page and everybody was comfortable, and that really helped, I think, make the entire show more sexy and more comfortable for the actors. And it wasn't it's a very different kind of sexiness on this show compared to, say, Game of Thrones or whatever, the gaze is different, the purpose is different. And it's been interesting to watch the discourse on Twitter around this particular show because, it's very clear that a lot of people have no idea how to discuss romance shows, especially historical romance. And that's something that people who've read romance and by people I mean mostly women, have been talking for years and years and years, because they're like, it's basically the backbone of the publishing industry. Why don't more people talk about it? And now that people are talking about it, the tone that people take with this show is so condescending. It's as if they're having all these big thoughts and ideas and feelings, and they imagine like nobody has ever had those feelings before. So they're just talking about like, oh, what about feminism, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, do you know who writes these things? Do you know who reads these things? Like, these are conversations that we've been having for years and years and years. And this is a series that was, Julia Quinn began writing Bridgerton in I think 2001 or 2002. So there's been an evolution in conventions of storytelling since that time. So it's just been interesting to read all the discourse.
Have you watched any Bridgerton, Sujoy?
Not yet, but I'm totally sold on the show now.
Amrita, what else have you been watching and kind of keeping yourself busy with?
Okay, so like Beth said, I've been watching a bunch of Netflix things with her. Poirot, somebody scrubbed.
That was a sad morning when we realized that she no longer had access to Poirot stories.
Yeah, I need to get a Sony Live subscription if I want to watch any Poirot, because I'm just geo-blocked on everything. So that's probably going to happen, which is good because I can also watch Scam 1992, which is something I want to watch. I watched a bit of Bandish Bandits on Prime, which is that Atul Kulkarni, Nasiruddin Shah movie. Series, sorry. But it's not actually about them. They're actually the secondary characters. But I liked the Atul Kulkarni track more than I liked the main story. And, guys, I am so ruined by my Turkish drama watching habit, because I realized, I was watching it and I just instinctively started just skimming. I would just jump back and forth, just following particular tracks, because that's what I do with my Turkish dramas, and it's really easy on YouTube and stuff when you're doing that for Turkish dramas, because they all have it clipped and they clip arcs of particular characters and stuff. So I'm just used to that now. So now I no longer have the patience to actually sit and watch something from beginning to end. It's terrible. I've been trained by the algorithm to become this horrible 21st century viewer. It's terrible. But I will say that I really liked that track with Atul Kulkarni and what's her name, yaar? I always forget it.
It's been surprising because it's been popping up on a lot of lists, Bandish Bandits, I feel.
Mm-hmm. It's good music.
Yeah, like even a few listeners mentioned it, that I should catch up on the show, and which I didn't do, unfortunately. I ran out of time. Amrita, I think you mean Shreya Chaudhary. Is that who you mean?
No.
Shiba Chadda?
Shiba Chadda. That's who I mean.
Yeah. Right. So, it's just been popping up. I know it was on Sujoy's list too for best music, I think.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get into later on. It's so how far did you get? How many episodes did you watch, Amrita?
Oh, I watched the entire thing. I just skimmed.
Oh wow.
That's what I'm doing.
You watched all of it in 20 minutes.
Basically.
You know those videos on YouTube that are XYZ old movie in 15 minutes? She's making those.
Amrita's making bootleg versions of Bandish Bandits on Quibi.
All right.
Then I also watched COOLIE No.1 for Asim. and a lot to say to him.
I want to get into that a bit later. So I want to talk about AK versus AK and Coolie No.1 a bit later in more details. Because I think that's why people will be tuning in. But yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And Varun also appreciates it.
Yeah, don't appreciate me right now. Wait until you hear what I have to say. And then I watched Ludo again for Asim and Sujoy. And that was actually... I see why people had a problem with it. Like, I can understand that because it has that very quirky tone to it. It's almost like unbearably aware of itself in a way that only Anurag Basu can do. You know, like, there's that... who are those two people supposed to be? Like the Ludo playing people.
It's just like God and Yamdevs, I think.
Yeah.
That it gets clarified in the last scene, right? They become the Masters of Death, whatever characters.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but I also really enjoyed it. I enjoyed Pankaj Tripathi so much in that film. I laughed and laughed and laughed from the very first scene that he comes in. He just chews the scenery, but he's like so good at it. I really enjoy him. Like, he was by far my favorite, but also the rest of them were also like really great. So, yeah.
But basically, they were playing Qadir Khan and Asrani in Taqdeer Wala. That's who they were, right?
Yeah. Great pop culture reference there, Asim.
Very timely also.
That's why I'm here, to help with your timeliness.
I need all the help I can get.
That's totally my kind of
anything else? Anything else, Amrita?
What else did I watch? Beth, you and I watched Iman Dharam, right?
Yes, we did. Yes. From 1974 or whatever.
Yeah. And then we also watched...
Please give me context. What is that work?
You
Can you tell me a bit more?
Your favorite is in it. Amitabh is in it with Shashi.
Oh, okay.
But it's
and everybody's in it.
But it's this really weird Salim Javed film because I think they were just experimenting with like different things, but the execution is just weird. For one thing, Rekha is paired with Shashi and Helen is paired with Amitabh. And then Rekha is wearing blackface all throughout because she's supposed to be the South Indian construction worker. And it's just weird, but they basically so they give they're like witnesses for hire, so they hang outside the court, and then if you pay them money they'll go inside and lie to the judge about whatever the case is that you've got in front of the judge, and then there comes a time when they need to say the truth, and then that's all. And it's Sanjeev Kumar is
I was going to say, when are you going to get to that?
Yes, Sanjeev Kumar in a wig that is just magnificent.
Also, it's got, Shashi and Amitabh have several great Hey We're Friends or Hey We're Brothers songs, and this one has a really good song. They like skip down the street holding hands and everyone's watching. It's wonderful. Yeah. So Asim, you should really watch at least the first 20 minutes of this film. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm actually on IMDb looking at it, and Amitabh is wearing a really weird mustache, which is not making me want to watch this movie. But
come on.
I am very fickle. I'm like super superficial. No, but I didn't even heard of this movie. So where did you guys watch it?
YouTube, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give it a shot. I've never even heard of this movie.
I think you'll really like a couple of the songs, if nothing else. It's it's good 70s.
That first song is amazing. The one where they're like holding hands and just being boyfriend and boyfriend. It's like fantastic.
It's very charming.
It's directed by the art director of Ajuba.
So that means Sujoy needs to watch it.
Oh, also we watched Enola Holmes. That's what we watched.
Oh yeah, that was really good.
I love that.
That was really fun. I really like that.
Yeah, that was good.
I really liked it, but I don't necessarily want to rewatch it. I felt like, it was like a good time pass, but then I've moved on from it. Like, it feels like it's building up for a sequel and like a franchise, but I don't think I need to watch any more of this. Although I did really enjoy it.
Did your daughter watch it, Asim?
We tried to get her to watch it, but she just ran away 20 minutes later.
Because I watched it actually on New Year's Eve with my my Bubble, for whom I am so grateful. They will never listen to this podcast, but Bubble, I love you. But my little nibbling, who is 10 years old, and not that little, she really liked it too. And we were so happy to find a movie that was, fun for adults, fun for kids, had interesting, I'm sure whitewashed to a large extent, but still fun depictions of historical London. Like, we really enjoyed it.
I think my daughter is maybe just like 2 years too young, because a lot of it was about Enola falling in love with this boy, clearly, and that doesn't interest my daughter at all. Yeah. So he's like, why is it about this boy? And she just kind of ran away. She did really, really, really enjoy Barfi, though. Speaking of Ludo. She loves it, and then she'd been watching We Can Be Heroes. We've watched that movie at least 30 times in this household. And every time she sees Priyanka, she's now basically Jilmil forever, which is kind of cute, Like, I think we all kind of like take digs at Priyanka, but it's kind of cute that Jilmil was kind of this character that's now special to my daughter. This is such a good portrayal. I'd forgotten how good it is, Barfi. So it was good to kind of revisit that. Anything else, Amrita?
We watched, but I watched, so you know how Jay Arjun Singh has that film discussion group? So for that, at this time, he had Olivia de Havilland, and we watched The Heiress and The Snake Pit for that one. So those are like, The Heiress in particular is like Monty Clift and Olivia de Havilland. And it's a pretty great movie if you're into classic film.
Well, when you call it a film discussion, this is not a podcast, or what is it?
No. It's just like a bunch of people on Zoom, and we watch a movie beforehand, and then everybody gets together and just talks about it.
And it's not available, or to viewers, or it's okay, it's just for you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, Joy, man, how did you keep busy over the last holiday break?
So I listed all the things that I watched, and I watched a lot of things.
I watched a lot of things too. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, I've got 3 categories, right? So I've caught up on stuff that I missed across the year. I watched stuff that came out recently, and I've watched just repeat watches of stuff that I watched before. So I watched over the new stuff that came out. I watched Death to 2020, which is the Charlie Brooker produced sort of screen wipe Netflix special, recapping on the year that has been. Basically the failures of the US and the UK government, basically one after another. Trump screwed this up and Boris screwed this up, and that was what being narrated through fake sort of staged interviews by fictional characters played by Hugh Grant and Lisa Kudrow, Samuel Jackson. It's really funny, and if people are familiar with a Charlie Brooker's sort of screen wipe format, this one's for you. What else? Mandalorian.
I haven't watched it yet, but I also feel like I have no inkling to revisit 2020.
Same.
Like, I'm just glad it's over and I made it, like we made it, you made it, I'm happy. Also, it's kind of funny that, when we talk about screw-ups, it's only about Boris. It's a very Western view, even in terms of comedy, because there's a lot of other countries that have screwed up things, but it's mostly about Boris and things. So, yeah.
I think this is because it's aimed for a Netflix UK, US, Ireland kind of an audience. I guess that's why. I watched The Mandalorian, finished this new season 2, which was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I found it much better than season 1. I binged watched Cobra Kai yesterday, all of it, season 3, and I'm very, very disappointed in it. Sorry.
I was watching your thread because I was also thinking of watching Cobra Kai. But I almost felt like when they were not part of Netflix and they were doing their own scrappy little thing, it was something cool and magical. And now that they are a success and they got like everybody, and it felt like also they really rushed into getting the season done, and then it got preponed. It was going to drop a slightly later,
and it kind of shows that it's got longer episodes now, and it's got 10 episodes, and it's like it's throwing back to things that we never really cared about, like Karate Kid 2, which is the forgotten sequel for a reason. It's not good. and they are...
I love Karate Kid 2. No. That's the one I watched first. I love Karate Kid 2.
And it just feels like when we watch anime, you've got like 700 something episodes, but like 400 of them are fillers. This felt like a filler season. It's leading up to something, but it feels like the season finale that we had for this felt like a mid-season thing, and the good stuff is yet to come. It just felt like it's kind of stretching thin now. That's what I felt about Cobra Kai. I watched Ted Lasso, which was amazing.
One of the best shows of the year, honestly. For me. Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it. It almost felt like it felt like having Leslie Knope back in my life, in some way.
That show is like a hug. Somebody giving you a hug, like a long hug. It feels so good. Have you watched it, Beth? Have you watched it, Amrita?
No.
Ted Lasso?
Oh, you must definitely. What else?
Is it on Netflix?
Ted Lasso is on Apple TV.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But it's been out a while, so I'm sure you can find it somewhere, right? You don't need to probably subscribe, or you can subscribe. Actually, Apple TV has good content. If you get it for a free month, watch everything and then just cancel it.
Yeah.
It's got some really, really good shows on there. And it's just one of those streaming services nobody talks about. But there's at least every show I've watched has been amazing. So I would recommend, especially Ted Lasso. And honestly, you guys know me. I do not like sports things, right? And it's like this premise of football and America and stuff like that. All things that I didn't want to watch. But once you get into it, the positivity of the show, it's such a good show.
Yeah. And I started watching Queen's Gambit, but it would need more patience from my side to continue watching it. But I'll definitely go back to watching Queen's Gambit. Among the movies, obviously from the holiday slot, I watched We Can Be Heroes, COOLIE No.1, Wonder Woman 1984, AK vs. AK, and Soul.
Let's get into that a little bit because I've also watched a few of them.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And I just on catching up of stuff that I missed from the year. I watched Loot Case. I watched Halahal Gunjan Saxena. I tried watching Chalang, but I just gave up on it. And I watched Ala Vaikunta Puramulu, which was amazing.
That's been on my watch list since Amrita recommended it, and then I was watching you tweet about it, so I was like, maybe I should watch it, because at the start of your Twitter thread, which I always enjoy, you seemed unsure if this is a good movie or a bad movie. And then you swung around. I was like, wait, I need to ask Sujoy if this is worth watching or not.
It's because I've lost my patience, right? I'm when it comes to movies that are longer than 2 hours, I really question myself whether I'm investing my time into it, if it is justified. And then, I went on the ride and I enjoyed it. And yeah.
Nice. I'll watch it. I think that's kind of a good one that I want to check out.
Yeah.
I'll go over quickly the things that I watched, and then we can maybe do a couple of minutes on Soul and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Because I think that might be interesting. Started watching 2 shows which I've heard so much good things about, and I'm having trouble with them because I feel that all of the characters are so unlikable, and those are Succession and The Flight Attendant. Both are on HBO, I think. I'm really using that HBO Max subscription, juicing it. Has anybody watched either of those shows?
No.
I've watched bits of Succession, the first 2 episodes. I haven't got back to it. Same with Chernobyl, which is another HBO show. I'll get back to it sometime. I'm taking my time with those.
Yeah. I mean, both the characters are so unlikable, and I realize I need somebody that I can root for, and I can't find anybody in Succession, neither flight attendant. So there's a kind of an intrigue, and there's kind of how do you say? There's a rhythm to the show which kind of takes you along, but I don't find somebody that I can kind of hang on to, and that's where I'm kind of struggling. So I'm not going through them as quickly as I wanted. I also binged. I have not binged many shows this year. I've binged Gangs of London.
Oh.
I'm not even sure anybody's heard of this show,
Somebody
really.
else was talking about it, and they really liked it too.
Well, I talked about it. I talked about it on the show a long time back when it came out.
And when I remember that, and I texted Sujoy, you totally undersold how good this show is. And I'm angry at you that I'm only discovering it 7 months later on. This show is amazing. Like, it's so good. It's super brutal though. So if you're looking for something light, like Beth was mentioning, you just want, something to kind of decompress, this is not it. It goes super deep into kind of the dark underworld of money in London, and like you have all of these different gangs. You have the Pakistanis, who are the most badass gang ever, which is so cool to see. Never happens. Then you have the Nigerians, who are utterly insane. Then you have the Ukrainians, then you have the Irish, and it's crazy. It funnily, it almost reminded me a little bit of Tesh, remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that weird connection, because that was also about the London underworld and the super rich. And I mentioned when we were reviewing Tesh that it's kind of, I thought it was cool to see that milieu, and you see a lot more of this in Gangs of London. So I just binged through that whole thing in 2 days. It's 9 episodes, and I feel nobody talks about it because it like the Apple TV problem, it's kind of a Sky exclusive. I think in America it's on AMC networks. So I don't know, Beth, AMC is not kind of the big name, right? It's kind of a smaller player.
No, I mean, since the end of Mad Men, I couldn't tell you an AMC show.
Yeah. They have Better Call Saul.
Walking Dead.
Yeah. So I don't think they have any heavy hitters, and I think that's probably why it went under the radar. And it also dropped like the 23rd of April, and they dropped all of the episodes in one go, which is kind of the worst time when the pandemic was in full swing. Yeah. So I think everybody was watching Tiger King instead, like that also happened this year.
Wow. Yeah, Tiger King was everywhere for like 2 weeks, right when I started working from home, and that seems like a million billion years ago.
Yeah. It does, and when I was on the BBC for the Harunis, we were doing kind of the best year of, and I was just going through the Bollywood releases, and I was like, man, Baghi 3 came out this year? I'd like totally forgotten. Like, my brain is a cheese grater.
And we started the year with a Varun film and ended the year with a Varun film. The Street Dancer 3D, remember? It was only me who went to watch that movie.
Yeah, and it's only on your best of list too. Varun thanks you. I watched Soul by Pixar. Did anybody watch that?
No, it looks so good though.
Just me and you.
Yeah, what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. It's definitely not a children's movie. It gave me like the range of emotions I went through watching Soul, questioning like existentialism and purpose and all of that. It was like, it's fascinating how an animated movie can trigger those emotions, and Pixar has been doing that. I think this, serves like a good double feature with Inside Out. And I think, this is a beautiful movie. I'm not sure exactly how to elaborate on what the great things that this movie achieved. I mean, the voice acting is great. The characters being played by Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey, they are amazing. I think it wasn't as funny as other Pixar movies usually are, but I really enjoyed it. What do you think, Asim?
For me, this movie is a bit like Tamasha, where I understand that it hits a lot of people in in their soul, but I didn't feel all of that much of it. I was like, it's fine, it's okay. This movie, I don't know if I think it really seems to appeal to people that, and I mean, no offense, but like people that aren't maybe happy at this moment in their lives, and I don't know, I'm quite happy, like even with the pandemic, I feel like I'm quite like, I don't have this feeling of unfulfilled dreams or unfulfilled potential, which I'm kind of mentioning Tamasha to, and those are just not feelings that I have. Also, people have that, this passion of this dream that I wanted to have as a child and I'm pursuing it. That's also a feeling I never have. I'm just happy and content with the life I have. And I think it really hits those points. And for me, the comparison with Inside Out is a great one. And I felt Inside Out was a much better movie because that was more about, parents and emotions. And that is kind of a theme that hits me a bit better than, unfulfilled desires and potential and things like that. I did like all of the human parts more than I like the metaphysical parts of this movie. Animation is great, like it always is. I do feel Pixar movies look the samey, it has a very clear house style, and I just feel like Pixar should kind of maybe do something different, use a different style for a few movies, because it all kind of feels the same-ish a little bit.
I guess that is by design. They want to establish that sort of these movies exist in the same universe, and they leave these Easter eggs here and there. You find like a Wall-E toy in a Toy Story movie and all of that. I think it's kind of by design that they want you to recognize it as a Pixar movie when you first see it. You can instantly say that this is a Pixar movie versus a DreamWorks movie. I guess that's why they do it. But I get to see, I see your point. I think, it would be nice to see some sort of a different visual style coming out of Pixar Studio.
And I think it's the same problem with Marvel movies to a certain degree. They all kind of look the same-ish now. And I feel, it's fine when you're coming up like both Pixar and Marvel did. They were little studios. But when you're the market leader and you're making the most money, now you can start taking at least a bit of risks, And I even feel like Disney animation does different styles of animation. Not that much, but there's a little bit of variance, where I feel Pixar kind of all looks samey. That's kind of something that was bothering me. I watched Citizen Kane. Speaking about old-timey movies, I watched Citizen Kane. I have nothing to say about Citizen Kane because a lot more smarter people have said, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, I totally see that. It's an amazing movie. What else can I say?
I tried watching Citizen Kane and I fell asleep. On the other hand, I watched Shawshank Redemption and I enjoyed that a lot more.
My plan was to watch Mank, on Netflix, and then when I started, I was like, I need to watch Citizen Kane before that, and I never got round to Mank. So I will watch Mank, but Citizen Kane was great. What do you guys think of Citizen Kane? I don't think we want to do that, right? Let's not get into that.
As Admiral Akbar would say, it's a trap.
Asim just moonwalking right off the stage.
Exactly. This is not the playhouse I want to be in. This is not that podcast. Did we all watch Wonder Woman 1984 though?
Yes.
I was going to, and then I heard everyone talk about it, and I was like, bye.
I think there's a bit of a similarity between COOLIE No.1 and Wonder Woman 1984. So I think if you didn't enjoy COOLIE No.1,
You
won't enjoy Wonder Woman.
that's the Netflix algorithm speaking, Asim, right?
Yeah. Beth, what did you think of Wonder Woman 1984?
So I loved the first one. I watched the Wonder Woman TV show as a little girl with brown hair, and I loved it. So the first one I really liked, although in retrospect, I can't really tell you why, other than it's, sort of hit some childhood happiness, and that scene of her coming up over the trench in the war, that's indelible to me for some reason. But I really did not like this film at all. It was so long, and a lot of stuff happened, and yet it just felt like nothing. Like maybe having two villains was a problem. I thought that Pedro Pascal seemed to be in a different film than everybody else, and I wanted to be in his film. I liked his film a lot better. Like during the Tolly Folly podcast, we talked about how villains and hamming can go together really well, and I was kind of reminded of that. I mean, I don't think he was full-on hamming, but there was something about the world he was in that I really wanted to be in. A lot of it didn't make sense. Like, who was his kid? Why was there this random, Asian American kid who didn't seem connected to anyone? Like, that had weird, like, save an orphan fetus. That sat very ill with me. Like it was something that had a backstory that they cut, because otherwise it would have been 3.5 hours long. Chris Pine added nothing. She asked him, I think you said this, that she's supposed to give this big emotional speech at the end, and she can't do it. I enjoyed the action bits, and that's really, and Kristen Wiig was funny when she was funny, but that was, and as a museum person, I want to say that none of what they talked about was accurate in that at all, in case you were wondering. I didn't like it at all. And I was actually thinking, if I had to rewatch either Coolie or Wonder Woman, which one would I pick? And I was like, oh God. So no, big no from me.
Sujoy, man, what did you think?
So this movie has been in production apparently from 2017 and took $200 million to make. And they made a movie out of a first draft of a script, I think. Like, this is just terrible on so many levels. It feels incomplete and rushed, and I had so many problems with the plot, so many problems with the characters, or I didn't invest enough in any of them. Even Wonder Woman, I didn't want her to win for some reason at some point. And then she becomes like a Twitch streamer in the end when she's like tethering the lasso to Pedro Pascal's character, and she's like streaming to the entire world. I don't know what the hell was happening in this movie. I didn't care for it. It was 2.5 hours long. Yeah, even the action bits, which are supposed to be an essential part of a blockbuster, a summer blockbuster movie like Wonder Woman, it just felt like rehashed and the same old shit that these DC and Marvel movies do, like slow-mo bits, and she would punch and things would fly. Nothing, like even the intro mall scene. Like intro to Wonder Woman again kind of a thing in the mall with all those colors that almost look like a checklist of the 80s stuff that we are going to show. Yeah. It was terrible. It was so terrible. And also, like, Wonder Woman opens with that scene which was kind of released on YouTube by Warner Brothers as like a teaser for people to get interested in the movie, which is basically they're back in the Mesquira where they have the Wipeout or Takeshi's Castle competition of them, jumping through all the hoops and stuff. And then little Wonder Woman, Diana, does not win the competition because she cheated. That plot never comes back at all. So there is no payback to that plot ever again.
I thought there was. I thought sort of. The idea that you can't take a shortcut comes up again at the end. But it certainly doesn't have any emotional resonance. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So yeah, those were my thoughts.
It's supposed to be about America, right? Like,
oh yeah.
It's supposed to be everything.
It's supposed to be about environmentalism. It's about peace in the Middle East. It's about a lot of things. I think this movie is like me wrapping Christmas gifts. Everything is covered, but it just doesn't feel right.
And why is everything in tinfoil?
Yeah, exactly. This movie almost gives you nosebleeds because it gives you these highs and then these extreme lows. So the action scenes I thought were really, really good. There's these moments where, they're flying through fireworks that are really pretty. Yeah. She's learning to fly, which I thought was really emotionally had some really, some thought in it, like that she's flying because this is the final memory that she has of Steve. And basically Steve is letting her fly. I thought that was kind of like something poetic they were going for. But then everything else is just so ramshackle put together. It's like there's no theme to this movie whatsoever. Like you mentioned about, letting go and like, letting go of the things you like and not taking shortcuts. But I also didn't really find those themes were kind of coming in. But yeah, Gal Gadot is really pretty.
I do think that the movie, it suffered from Corona in that, I mean, not just the theatrical issue, but when was it supposed to come out? April? May?
Yeah, April, May.
So it was before the American election, and it would have felt different then because to me, it felt very clearly an indictment of what we've been suffering the last 4 years. And I felt that commentary doesn't hit the same way now. I mean, we've still got 18 days or whatever, like, Jesus, please let us make it. But, I just don't, it's kind of like, we know. I mean, we knew before most of us, but like we really know better, even better now. And what we've been through and perpetrated on ourselves and the world as a nation is just, it's even worse. And I just feel like it doesn't quite fit. And because of that, I also, sorry, this is not well formed, but the presidential figure, I'm like, you're in the 80s. Reagan is so easy to make fun of. He always was, but he's especially so now. Do that. They missed a real opportunity to take some active, sort of reflective jabs at Reagan, which I think they should, especially if they're trying to make this kind of political superhero film. And then that figure they had in there didn't really ring as anything other than like bumbling city mayor, but instead he was the president. So they could have either made that president more Reagan or more Trump, and they should have picked one. And I felt like that was a lost opportunity. I mean, that was one of like 8 million things that happened, so it doesn't really matter. But because they bothered to go to the White House and have all that happen, I felt like they should have made more out of that. And also the people, my bubble that I watched this with, someone was like, so they just got to walk out of the White House after doing all that? And of all the unrealistic things, that one did stand out. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of logistical problems in this. Pedro Pascal just, bursts out of that basement where he was making his speech broadcast, and then he just goes around loitering around searching for his son all of a sudden and screams, Alistair! Alistair! Alistair!
And there he is.
Happening? And there he is.
And Washington, D.C. is not the biggest American city by any stretch, but it's bigger than a basement and a lawn outside the wiring compound,
Yeah, it's really a messy movie, and I think they had intentions, and then they did get screwed with the timing and the release, and then I don't think they wanted it on streaming, but HBO wanted it to.
I mean, they can't use that excuse though, because this movie was out for release in April, so it was ready to be released like this. If at all.
Don't you feel that final scene where she's like in Winter Wonderland that was shot later or like added later?
It felt really tacked on.
Yeah, I did, and I feel like that's the button to the story.
Yeah.
And I was like, this doesn't even make sense with the rest of the movie. Like,
Had nothing to do with anything.
That's kind of like, oh, let's make this a Christmas movie now. You know?
Right.
yeah. So yeah, wholehearted endorsement from Khandaan for Wonder Woman. Does that make you watch it, Amrita?
No.
It's really long.
And there are no songs.
There's no song. But I do have to say, I did appreciate the fact that I could watch a cinema movie at home. You know what I mean? Like this movie is like a theatrical experience, right? And we get to watch it at home. And I was feeling I was missing that. Yeah. Even if it's a bad movie, I do appreciate watching like a big movie that I should watch it in theaters and I can't go. And I thought it was kind of cool that they still released it and they didn't, keep it in the tank for another year and bring it out next summer. And this kind of segues me into our talk of COOLIE No.1, I feel.
Yeah, because that's the movie that I miss watching at the cinema more than Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and as listeners know, I was very much looking forward to this movie. Like, I was on board. Mm-hmm. And like everything in 2020, this year has not been good for me. This has not treated me well. Amrita, you did watch COOLIE No.1, right?
Yes.
Okay. You can let loose. What did you think of COOLIE No.1?
God, what can one think about a movie like COOLIE No.1? I feel like any thought that I have about it will be more thought than David Dhawan put into it, because it's insane. Like, what the hell is happening with this film? Okay. Let's start with like that song, like that you had that Hirogiri sequence where he's saving the child from the train tracks, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And everybody was laughing because everybody was like, "Ye kya hai? Ye VFX hai ki kya hai?" Like, it's terrible, It looks like there's like better VFX on TikTok these days than there is in this movie. So people were like laughing about it. But then I saw the film and even the Photoshop. What the hell is that Photoshop? The Photoshop is also from the 90s. Like, all the things, and they do it over and over and over again. Like, they just focus on the Photoshop pictures of Varun with, like, Trump and, like Dhoni or whatever. And I'm just laughing my head. Like, I'm laughing at this movie and not laughing with this movie at all. And then, of course, it's funny because just a few days ago, we all had a Twitter watch-along of Love, the Salman Revati film that we watched with, was it Shakila?
Yes.
Yeah. So, so a bunch of us were watching it on Twitter, and Anila, who's been on this podcast before, said that the family in Love is the first Christian family in a Bollywood movie that she's seen where they can all speak Hindi properly. And then here is a movie made 20 years late, not 20, 25, 26 years later. And, they're all speaking that Bombaya Christian Hindi all over again, where he's just like, "Tum kya karta, man?" And I'm like, why? Why is this being done? And also, God, I miss everybody from the 90s so much in like varying degrees. Like, every time there was a situation where it should have been Kader Khan, I'm just like, ye kyun hai? Like, every time it should have been Govinda, and I'm just like, ye kyun hai? And I don't feel that way about remakes and things, because I feel like remakes are a different thing unto themselves, right? But this film is not a different thing. This film is very deliberately steeped in what that film was in the 90s, right from, and Varun definitely does a Govinda voice all throughout the film. And the only payoff for that was that scene where he suddenly breaks into an impression of everybody from Bollywood, and I didn't know that Varun had that in him. So that was briefly funny, but apart from that, I didn't laugh at anything. Every time like Sara would come on, I would think like, oh, it's Amrita, and then I would think, oh, it's like not as good Lolo, like because she was doing like the same songs and everything, right? And it was just not Lolo at all. Like Lolo is a good dancer. Like Sara's fine, like she's not bad. I've definitely seen worse dancers. But she's not Lolo, like Lolo she had that energy, she had that oomph, she could just sell that toporiness of all those songs that she did with Govinda. And Sara's a fan paying tribute. She's not owning the song, there's a difference between the two. And the entire movie is shot from like under people's skirts. and I will say this for David Dhawan, he exploits his son as much as he exploits anyone else, except for Shahid Kapoor's sister, whose name I cannot remember offhand, but who appears on screen and immediately has a fat joke thrown her way, and I'm just like, oh, I see. Yeah, so this is what it is.
What about you, Beth? What did you think?
Oh yeah, I hated this movie. I have no 90s nostalgia, obviously. I don't like his 90s comedies. I've seen very few Govinda movies at all because I can't get into, I have not been able to get into the sort of 90s comedy the genre overall. I thought this movie was juvenile. I thought this movie was racist. I thought this movie was mean-spirited. I thought it was dumb. I thought I was talking with mega Twitter friend Sal about this, and they brought up the point of Sara seems like she is lip-syncing a performance of this character, and I would absolutely agree with that. I felt like the only thing she contributed was legs, and that could be anybody. Yeah, I was also not sold. She doesn't sell any of this. I mean, not that there's much to sell. The older comedy uncles were all just horrible across the board. The setup makes no sense. And like, we're fully used to movies not making any sense, but like if there's one thing Bollywood can do, it's set up an emotional response to a child being separated from a parent in a crowd. And even that does not work at all. At all. And I just regret the time that I spent on this movie. And I actually fast forwarded most of the last 40 minutes until like the last 10 minutes, which of course is slapstick people hanging from a hospital. And Paresh Rawal should just fall from a building and die. Like, that's fine. I regret everything I spent on this movie. It's terrible.
Oh, also, I had to laugh because we don't see Sara for like a pretty long time, because everything else in this movie is like setup. It's like fast, right? Like within the first like 5 minutes, you get the setup of the movie, you get to know who the characters are, you're introduced to Varun, like all of that happens. And then you still haven't seen Sara, who's named Sara in the film. And then there's a song with Sara's picture, but not Sara. And I was like, wow, so this is the kind of movie that it's going to be. But also the picture is her Shadiwala photo, the kind that you show to prospective grooms. And it's Sara in like booty shorts and a crop top.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, Sundar Sushil Sanskari. Like that's the shot that you want to send to like your prospective like in-laws. So that's the kind of stupidity that this movie makes me laugh. Like none of the jokes, so to speak, made me laugh, but like things like this made me laugh.
She's called Sara because it's a setup for the joke ke aadha nahi Sara hi chahiye.
Yeah.
That's why she's called Sara.
Yeah.
Sujoy, I feel you have the fondest memory of the original Coolie No.1.
Yeah. And
so how much sacrilegious was this remake for you?
I mean, well, 2020 has been exhausting, so I let this movie just wash over me, I'm the least offended by it. I was like, I needed my, keep my brains at home, but I am at home, so I don't know what to do. But I'll just watch this movie as it is, I think, as Paresh Rawal would say, heaven in the docks, man. Plummeted has the stocks, man. I mean, I don't know who this movie is aimed for. People who are nostalgic about the original Coolie No.1 will find this really offensive because it's very, very Govinda light. Sab kuch diet hai. Everything is low calorie in this movie if you compare it to the first one. And for people who are being introduced to this is so retro in that way and done really badly. You don't have Kader Khan. The writer is Farhad Samji, who's written terrible, terrible movies. The jokes don't, land at all. Varun is trying his very best. I will give him all the props for that. He is bringing all the tricks that he can conjure, and I really like him for that. He's giving his everything into this movie. He's committed to the role. He does from Mithun to Shah Rukh to everybody. I really like his Mithun impression, by the way.
What was your guys' favorite impression, by the way? He does, I wrote them down, which ones he does.
I don't know. I just remember, the Salman one was funny.
Dilip Kumar.
Actually.
He does Dilip Kumar, he does Mithun, and he does SRK. Yeah. So which was your favorite?
My favorite was Mithun. Like when he said, Wi-Fi ke naam ka kutta palu, chuli chuli. Oh, I wrote that down. I really like that.
I love this Dilip Kumar though, man. I love the Dilip Kumar. That was probably my favorite one.
Like my favorite bit about the movie was that they reduced the amount of screen time that Rajpal Yadav gets in this movie, and I was very, very thankful to David Dhawan for that.
I mean, that's the only thing in the whole film that's reduced. The only thing that was trimmed.
Yeah.
Like, I feel... You guys are so negative. I feel I need to be positive about this movie, but I can't.
Yeah. I think I would have enjoyed it a bit more if I was watching with a crowd, in the cinema, because everybody's laughing. You sort of get that crowd feeling. Because hell, I enjoyed Happy New Year in the cinema, But yeah, watching this alone at home, it doesn't really make for a good experience.
So I was invited on the Bollywood is for Lovers podcast to talk about both movies, and I made a strategic mistake. I watched the original Coolie No.1 first, which honestly I have no memories of. I don't remember that movie at all. And I've never really connected with Govinda movies that much. It's never been my thing. I was already very much into the Khans then when this was happening. The Govinda period was happening. So I shouldn't have done that, because then I feel the jokes would have been more fresh in the new one, and the impressions and my liking of Varun might have, taken me through this movie. But unfortunately, because I saw the original one, everything was kind of stale. It didn't remind me how much of a big crush I had on Karisma Kapoor watching the original one. Like, that was a period. And then it's sad to see Sara Ali Khan take over that role, because she's nowhere compared to, what Karisma was. And I feel it's interesting with Sara Ali Khan, because I think I've been on board with her. Like, I want her to do well, but I feel she's better in songs than she is in acting. Like, I don't feel that acting-wise she's really been able to deliver yet. And I was hoping that coming from the stock, and also she seems like a real movie Bollywood fan like Varun, that she would understand those Bollywood conventions. But it feels that she seems to be more of a kind of a TikTok singing playground kind of person than actually an acting person. So I don't know where she can really go. I don't know. I worry about Sara Ali Khan having watched this movie because I don't think I've seen much of her that I've really enjoyed up till now. And I've not seen Love Ajkal. I don't know if anybody has.
No.
But that also kind of got blasted. And that also came out this year, I think, even.
It did.
It did.
So the year has been long for us, but it's been longer for Sara Ali Khan, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, when people say that so-and-so is a fan and therefore they should be better at creating or even just reproducing filmy staple, emotions or gestures or dances or whatever, I just don't think that that's relevant. Because we've seen directors who say they're fans and their films are terrible. There's plenty of actors who say they're fans and their performances are terrible. I couldn't be in a film and I'm a fan. I don't think that those two things are actually connected at all. And I understand why interviewers ask them questions like that. But, okay, so she has nepotistic opportunities and she has knowledge. That doesn't mean anything as a performer. Necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm just saying, there's an energy to Varun or Ranveer or even Ayushmann Khurrana. These guys have really grown up on these movies that I feel kind of shines through with these performances where I don't feel that necessarily with the Rajkumar Rao, me. Mm-hmm. There seems to be a difference there. Yeah. And if I compare even Janhvi with Sara Ali Khan, I feel Sara Ali Khan, I would say she's a fan of these movies less than Janhvi is necessarily. But I feel Janhvi has done a much better, she's already delivered in my book in a lot of these things, be it Gunjan Saxena or be it even her little story in Ghost Stories, which I thought was probably one of the best performances she's had, even better than Gunjan Saxena. But I don't feel that fandom from her as much as I feel that from Sara Ali Khan. So maybe it's just I feel Sara Ali Khan hasn't delivered really up till now.
Yeah.
So I feel the promise was there and she's not delivered. So maybe I'm trying to, contextualize that in some way. I mean, there were some moments I laughed, but that's just because I like Varun, I loved him wearing that Crocodile Dundee hat, for no reason. I laughed at that for 5 minutes. I do like their meet cute under the shower, which also was kind of slightly different. But I do feel this felt more like a cash grab than Judawaan 2 did. I think Judawaan 2 maybe had a bit more of a fandom, and I feel next time they do make these movies, maybe make movies like Main Tera Hero, which was also a ripoff of Govinda and Salman movies, but they were their own thing.
Yeah.
And I think if they are looking to make Jodi number 1 and Hero number 1 and BV number 1, that seems like a bad route to go down. So I'm worried about that if that's the plan that they're going down. Shall we do AK versus AK?
Yeah.
You watched that, right, Amrita?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sujoy, man, let's go to you. What did you think of AK versus AK?
I have watched so many things that I've pretty much forgotten about it, but I really enjoyed it. That's what I can remember. I don't know. I think Anil Kapoor was great. I really enjoyed his performance. Let me recollect my thought. Let's go around the table, I guess.
Amrita, maybe you want to go first.
Yeah, so Beth and I watched this film together, and before we went into it, both of us were feeling a little bit apprehensive because we were because the reactions had already come out by then, and we watched it a couple of days after it premiered. So our timelines were full of these film bros who were just jazzing about it, and we were just like, oh no, this is going to be one of those films. And then we watched it and we had a really good time. It is, for one thing, it's perfectly cast. This film really needed those two people to play. And it's funny because in all the interviews and behind the scenes things, and there was a a talk at the BFI that was hosted by Danny Boyle between Vikramaditya, Motwane, who directed the film, and Anurag Kashyap and Anil Kapoor. And Anurag Kashyap, made it a point to just explain over and over again for whoever might be listening that this is fiction and that it's not based on reality. And the reason why he had to do it is because the audience, as we have learned painfully over the past few years, is incredibly stupid, but also because it's so perfectly cast, it felt like it might be true, which is what happened when they were doing the promos for this film, and they did it through this Twitter beef. And a lot of people at first thought that was real, and Anil Kapoor and Anurag Kashyap were taking pot shots at each other. And in the film, they do like really clever things, and the film is really clever, isn't it, Beth?
Oh, yeah. I completely agree that everything they did in there was so smart, which is such a contrast to something like COOLIE No.1, which I saw on the same day, by the way, because I'm an idiot. Like, everything in here was thought out and planned out and interconnected and executed really well.
And it was so good the way that they included the family, And I almost died laughing at the Harshvardhan Kapoor cameo. That was like, I haven't watched Bhavesh Joshi, even though Sujoy loved it so much. And actually now I want to try it out because I'm just like, well, all right.
Vikram fucked me over with Bhavesh Joshi. Vikram fucked me over.
But there was a point where, he's giving that audition in the lounge to Anurag, and he's like acting it out. And I was just telling Beth, at that point, if I was Anurag, I'd look at Anil and be like, I feel like the world, like the universe has punished you enough by giving you like these children, like there's Sonam, but there's also this child, like you have suffered enough. I forgive you. But that was,
and then
really
when you get to the end of the film and then you realize that what you would realize about that performance, it's even funnier.
Yeah. But it's also self-aware about that, that Harsh, in the real world, what he is, he's self-aware of that and he's making fun of that. Anurag is making fun of, film directors who think highly of themselves. So it's very self-aware in that it's meta, obviously. And like Beth, you tweeted at me saying you were concerned about if it's going to be film bro wank. And I replied to you saying it's actually making fun of those. And you took a sigh of relief.
This is a fun and unexpected movie to come out in 2020, given that the discourse starting from the time Sushant Singh Rajput died has been all about like nepotism and like nepo kids and, hate. And then there's been a lot of hate against Anurag Kashyap and, his brother came out and made all those allegations about Salman. And then you have this film that comes at the end in which Anil Kapoor, like Anurag Kashyap is talking about like how it's much easier for you to survive in the industry if your last name is Kapoor. Like that's how the movie starts. And then it ends with Kapoor turning the tables on him and telling him that it was his family that helped him turn the tables on him, which is really interesting. And it's also interesting to see that none of the film bros on Twitter mentioned that part of it. Like, that part of it just, like, went entirely over their heads, even though they'd been crying about it the entire freaking year. So, it tells you so much about the discourse. It tells you so much about how Bollywood functions. And also, I was telling Beth, as we were watching this amazing scene, and Beth hasn't seen Ram Lakhan, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, Beth was asking me, if I thought that, Anil had, a hand in choosing the song, because there's this really pivotal moment where he's asking the public for help and then they make him dance. Like literally they're just like nach. And he dances to My Name is Lakhan. And she was asking me if I thought that Anil chose the song. And I said, it doesn't matter like whether Anil chose it or Motwane chose it, because there is literally only that one song that could have been played in that moment, like it is that Tapori Anil Kapoor 1990s anthem. Like when he dies, that's the song that they're going to play on TV, So, yeah. And then there were like, there's so many little things also, like there's he's injured and he's bleeding on the street and he's literally begging. And it completely leaves like the other person, like the camera person, unmoved. And I was telling Beth, like there's a line that Anurag has in the film where he says, the only reason I've survived so long in Bollywood is because I'm absolutely insane. And there's a certain callousness that is required in filmmaking. I think that's one of the things that this film is trying to say, that there's a callousness to being in this particular line of business that is not for everybody. And the ability to tell fact from fiction and to turn and to like not be taken in by the fiction of these people. Like that is another thing, like you have to be able to judge who is being real and who is being fake and to what degree. And the moment you lose sight of that, everything comes crashing down.
When I was watching that scene, and I mean, honestly, throughout the movie, you're watching it and you're like, how good of an actor is Anil Kapoor?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've seen him do so many different things. And it's just like that feeling of how good this guy is. And he's basically also surrounded by non-actors, right? Most of the time, or less talented actors. Like, okay, Harshvardhan has a great scene, but he's nowhere near Anil Kapoor, right? Like the performance straight after that car crash he gives is amazing. Even that wedding sequence or that dance sequence, the desperation and, the borderline insanity that he has at that point. It's so well played. And then also, surprisingly, our former guest, Sucharita, I feel she's a surprisingly good actress for that one sequence she was in, which was kind of a surprise. How bad of an actress is Sonam Kapoor, though? She has one word and she can't convince me. Like, it's insane to me. Like, nothing she does, I'm not buying anything she does.
But it makes sense, though, because she is acting.
Yeah, but she's supposed to sell it in that moment, man. She's like, we're not supposed to know it then. Yeah. And it's like, I don't believe anything she's selling. Yes, you can watch it that way, but no, that's not what it should be. This was the best she had, and no, she can't even say daddy in the right way. It's crazy. I do feel that, this movie is made with a certain premise and a certain kind of setup, right? And there are moments in the movie where the movie really pushes the premise to breaking point, and you really need to be on board. Because otherwise you can really see the seams of the movie. And especially like, for example, that car crash scene that happens, there's really a clear cut in the stunt person taking over from Anil, and then zooming back the camera, and then Anil stands up, that kind of thing. But I feel that because you are with the movie and you are on board with the ride that it's on, that it doesn't bother me that much. But I think these movies are film bro territory, right? This is not COOLIE No.1 territory. So it's fun when you pick out the seams when you're watching something like 1917, the Sam Mendes war movie. You enjoy picking out, okay, this is where they cut it and this is not one sequence, those kind of things. And if you look at it with that lens, I think it becomes a bit fragile, this movie. I do like and like another reason is because a lot of there's a lot of non-actors obviously in the movie, but when there are actors, like supporting actors, you can really pick them out. That Uncle Rahim is somebody you've seen before. That Javed, the taxi driver, you've seen him in other things. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, oh, okay, now this is going to be a sequence with an actor because I've seen this actor in another role, but he's actually not being an actor, he's playing a character. So that's those moments. It's kind of where I feel the seams of the movie. But I did enjoy it. I really liked it. It also reminded me weirdly of Michael Douglas's The Game. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of just reminded me, and I love the line where Anil Kapoor has met Tom ke saath film bana raha hu. It's like, which Tom? Tom Cruise? No, Tom Hardy. Batman mein jo tha. That I really liked that one. I really liked the total douche that Harshvardhan was playing and the corduroy suit he was wearing to elevate the douchiness of, who wears a full corduroy suit. And I was also surprised that Anil Kapoor is a surprisingly good rapper, and I would see he's a better rapper than Ranveer Singh is. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on AK versus AK.
I thought Anil as an actor in real life, right? Or the position where he is in, he was big in the 80s and the 90s, and then he played supporting roles and senior roles, and he played the father role in Dil Dhadakne Do, and that sort of is played as a joke in this movie. And now the kind of position he's in, he's been working with international projects, and then he does an experiment like this, and he's so smart and ahead of the curve than any other contemporary in the industry. He makes jokes about ye to Jagu wala film jaisa lagta hai, or whatever, and even he made that Netflix video to promote this movie with Jagu, and he's so much smarter. Like, Amrita, you tweeted about AK versus AK is the film that fan wanted to be, and I do see the similarities in that. And when he is portraying a star outside of his comfort zone in the midst of public, and he's humbled by that, and he's reminded of the kind of, I'm just a performer, I am here to perform for you, and like in that scene in Fan where Shah Rukh's character is off to a foreign wedding, and the guest asks him to, go perform your show, and he just, smiles, humiliated. It's kind of like, parallels between those two performances. And I'm really, in awe of this performer. Like, Anil Kapoor can do it all.
Yeah, for me, both Fan and this film are one of the things that they both are doing is exploring the idea of celebrity in India, and the relationship that the celebrity has with its fans, And this was really interesting to me because I actually talked about this on Twitter. I don't know who else could have played Anil's role because he has such a specific relationship with the city of Bombay that you really see in this film. The places that he goes to, the people that he meets, the language that he uses, because he is a Bombay boy, he grew up.
He does say mere andar ka chembur jag jayega, That's,
and you believe him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You believe him. He also attains such a superstar status, but you really believe that he's also that boy that can become Chemburwala. And there's nobody like that. I don't see that with anybody necessarily.
So
right?
At the conceptual stage, this movie was about to be made with Shahid Kapoor and was going to be called AK versus SK. And I'm so glad that that didn't happen.
Yuck.
Yeah, what would that even be like? I don't what does Shahid even have that you can bring to this movie, right? I'm glad that they didn't
I was wondering you were going to ask who would get kidnapped in Shahid's case. He doesn't have anybody.
Yeah, uska kaun hai?
No, his wife was about to be kidnapped for that.
Oh yeah, weren't they going to maybe launch her as an actress too or something?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's do that.
3 hours later.
Yeah, I know, right? I was just like, oh my god, I need carbs or something like that. I'm getting lightheaded from all this talking. Beth, where can people find you online?
I'm Beth Loves Bolly on Twitter.
Sujoy?
What is my social handle? I'm at 9E3K on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow us at Khandaan Podcast on Instagram and vote for us on the Ghana Podcast Instagram post. We are being nominated for the best entertainment podcast of 2020. Thank you for those who have already commented.
Yeah, we just want to beat Anupama Baji, right? Basically, that's all we want to do. Amrita.
You can find me on Twitter at AmritaIQ and also on my YouTube channel, which is Amrita by the Book.
Great. I'm at Asim Bernie. You can follow us on YouPodcast on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. We're everywhere. We're trying to be everywhere. I was on the BBC Haroonies doing the Haroonies, the big debate wrap-up show. I'll add the link. And I was also on the Bollywood is for Lovers COOLIE No.1 review. I'll also add the link, and I'll also add the link to the Ghana where you can vote for us, and we would really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Next episode will be our wrap-up of 2020.
क्या बोलती